The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 1882, and Katherine Greer knew, before he even opened it, that his carefully ordered life in Golden, Colorado, was about to change forever. He stood on the porch of his ranch house, the envelope trembling slightly in his calloused hands as he read the words penned in elegant script. Delilah Sutton would arrive by train in 3 days' time, exactly as they had arranged through months of correspondence. But there was something else, something she had not mentioned in any of her previous letters. She was bringing her mother. Katherine ran a hand through his dark hair and let out a long breath. At 32 years old, he had built this ranch from nothing, carved out a life in the rugged Colorado territory with his own 2 hands and the sweat of his brow. He had advertised for a mail-order bride not because he was desperate, but because he was practical. Running a ranch alone was hard work, and the few available women in Golden were either already spoken for or uninterested in the harsh realities of frontier life. Delilah's letters had been thoughtful and honest. She wrote of her life in Philadelphia, of her work as a seamstress, of her love for simple things like morning coffee and the sound of rain on windows. She was 24, she had told him, and ready for a new beginning. He had appreciated her directness, her lack of pretense. But nowhere in those carefully worded letters had she mentioned bringing along an elderly mother. Katherine folded the letter and tucked it into his shirt pocket. He looked out across his land, at the mountains rising in the distance, at the cattle grazing peacefully in the autumn sunshine. He had worked too hard to let anything derail his plans now. If Delilah needed to bring her mother, then he would make it work. He was nothing if not adaptable. That afternoon, he rode into town and found Jacob Morrison at the general store. "I need lumber," Katherine said without preamble. "And nails, lots of nails. I have 3 days to build an addition onto the house." Jacob raised his eyebrows. "Your mail-order bride finally coming in?" "Yes, and she is bringing her mother." Jacob let out a low whistle. "That is quite the surprise." "That is one way to put it," Katherine replied dryly. "Can you help me or not?" By evening, lumber was being loaded onto a wagon, and Katherine had enlisted the help of 2 ranch hands, Miguel and Thomas, to assist with the construction. They worked by lamplight that first night, measuring and cutting, planning the layout of 2 new rooms that would connect to the existing house. "You are a good man, boss," Miguel said as they hammered support beams into place. "Not many would do this." Katherine paused in his work. "She is going to be my wife. Family is family." The words felt strange in his mouth. He had been alone for so long, ever since his own parents had died of fever 6 years ago. The concept of family had become abstract, something other people had. But soon, if everything went according to plan, he would have a wife and a mother-in-law. The thought made him smile despite his exhaustion. They worked through the night and into the next day. Katherine drove himself and his men hard, but he paid them well and fed them better. By the second evening, the frame was up, and they were beginning to close in the walls. The addition would include 2 bedrooms, one larger than the other, both with windows that looked out toward the mountains. He wanted Delilah's mother to have a view, something beautiful to see when she woke each morning. On the 3rd day, as the train was due to arrive, Katherine found himself standing in the nearly completed addition, breathing in the smell of fresh cut pine. The rooms were simple but solid. He had built them with care, each nail driven true, each board fitted precisely. The floors were smooth, the windows properly hung. There was no furniture yet, but that could come later. He washed up at the pump outside, scrubbing away 3 days of sawdust and sweat. He changed into his best shirt, the blue one his mother had made him years ago, and his cleanest pair of trousers. He ran a comb through his hair and looked at himself in the small mirror hanging by the door. His reflection showed a man weathered by sun and work, with gray already threading through his dark hair at the temples. Lines creased the corners of his eyes from years of squinting into the bright Colorado sky. He was not a handsome man, not in any conventional sense, but he was honest and hardworking. He hoped that would be enough. The train station in Golden was crowded with the usual mix of prospectors, merchants, and families. Katherine stood on the platform, his heart beating faster than he cared to admit. He had seen a photograph of Delilah, a formal portrait she had sent months ago. She had fair hair and kind eyes, but photographs could lie. People could lie. He steadied himself with the reminder that he had been honest in all his correspondence, and he had to trust she had been as well. The train arrived in a great hissing cloud of steam and smoke. People began to disembark, and Katherine found himself searching each face, looking for the woman from the photograph. Then he saw her. Delilah Sutton stepped down from the train car with careful grace, one hand holding a small valise, the other supporting an elderly woman whose silver hair was pinned neatly beneath a dark bonnet. Even travel-worn and dusty from the journey, Delilah was lovely. She had the kind of beauty that came from within, a warmth in her expression that the photograph had not quite captured. She was scanning the crowd, clearly looking for him, and when their eyes met, she smiled tentatively. Katherine walked toward them, removing his hat. "Miss Sutton." "Mr. Greer." Her voice was soft but steady. "I am so glad to finally meet you." Up close, he could see that her eyes were green, the color of new leaves in spring. She wore a simple traveling dress of dark blue, modest and practical. Everything about her seemed genuine, and he felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "The pleasure is mine," he said. Then he turned to the elderly woman. "And you must be Delilah's mother." "Dorothy Sutton," the woman said. Her voice was thin but firm, and her eyes, the same green as her daughter's, assessed him with sharp intelligence. "Thank you for allowing me to come, Mr. Greer. I know this was not part of your arrangement. Call me Katherine, please, both of you, and it is no trouble at all. I have built rooms for you both." Delilah's eyes widened. "You built rooms? In just 3 days? The ranch keeps me busy, but I know how to work quickly when needed." He gestured toward a wagon waiting at the edge of the platform. "Come, let me get your things. You must be exhausted from your journey." As they loaded the trunks and cases onto the wagon, Dorothy swayed slightly, and Delilah caught her arm with practiced ease. Katherine noticed the worry that flashed across Delilah's face, there and gone in an instant. "Perhaps we should get your mother home to rest," he suggested gently. "Yes," Delilah agreed. "She is not as strong as she once was. The journey has been difficult." Katherine helped both women onto the wagon seat, then climbed up himself and took the reins. As they rolled through Golden's Main Street, he pointed out the church, the general store, the doctor's office. "It is smaller than Philadelphia, I am sure," he said. "It is beautiful," Delilah replied, and he could hear that she meant it. "I have never seen mountains like these." "Wait until winter," he said. "They become even more magnificent covered in snow." Dorothy was quiet during the ride, but Katherine caught her studying him when she thought he was not looking. He wondered what she saw, what she thought of the man her daughter had agreed to marry sight unseen. The ranch came into view as they crested a low hill. The house was modest but well maintained, with the new addition clearly visible along the eastern side. Corrals held horses and cattle, and smoke rose from the chimney of the bunkhouse where his ranch hands lived. It was not grand, but it was honest work and honest living. "This is lovely," Delilah breathed. "Katherine, you have built something wonderful here." He felt an unexpected surge of pride at her words. I have worked hard, but it is lonely work. I am hoping that will change now." He helped them down from the wagon and carried their bags inside. The main house consisted of a large kitchen with a wood stove, a sitting area with comfortable chairs near the fireplace, and his bedroom toward the back. The new addition connected through a hallway off the kitchen. "I know it is not fancy," he began, but Delilah shook her head. "It is perfect. Show us the rooms you built, please." He led them down the short hallway to the two new bedrooms, the larger one he had intended for Delilah, the smaller for her mother. Both had beds he had brought in from town that morning, simple but sturdy, with fresh linens. There were washstands with pitchers and basins, hooks on the walls for hanging clothes, and those windows looking out toward the mountains. Dorothy walked slowly to the window of the smaller room and gazed out. "I have never seen anything so beautiful," she said quietly. "Thank you, Katherine. This is more than we could have hoped for." Delilah stood in the doorway of her room, her hand pressed to her mouth. When she turned to look at him, there were tears in her eyes. "You built this in 3 days, for us? I wanted you to feel welcome, both of you." She crossed the space between them and took his hand. Her touch was warm, and he felt something shift in his chest at the contact. "You are a good man," she said. "I am grateful to be here." That evening, Delilah insisted on making supper despite her mother's protests that she should rest. Katherine watched as she moved around the kitchen with easy competence, finding things where instinct told her they should be. She made a simple meal of beans and cornbread, with coffee that was far better than anything he had managed to brew on his own. They ate at the table together, the three of them, and it felt both strange and right at the same time. Dorothy's color had improved after resting, though Katherine noticed she ate little. Delilah noticed too, gently encouraging her mother to take just a few more bites. After supper, they sat near the fireplace. The September evening had turned cool, and the warmth was welcome. Dorothy excused herself to bed early, leaving Katherine and Delilah alone for the first time. "I should explain about my mother," Delilah began, but Katherine raised a hand. "You do not owe me explanations." "I do, though. I was not entirely honest in my letters. My mother has been ill for some time. The doctors in Philadelphia said there was nothing more they could do. She has perhaps a year left, maybe less." Delilah's voice cracked slightly. "I could not leave her behind to die alone. I had hoped you might understand, but I was afraid if I told you, you would withdraw your offer." Katherine was quiet for a moment, turning this information over in his mind. "Why did you agree to come west if your mother was so ill?" "Because staying in Philadelphia meant watching her slowly waste away in a cramped boarding house room, with nothing but gray skies and the smell of soot from the factories. I thought perhaps out here, with clean air and beautiful views, her final months might be peaceful, might be better." Delilah met his eyes directly. "I know I am asking a great deal, more than is fair." "Life is rarely fair," Katherine said, "but it can be kind if we let it. Your mother is welcome here for as long as she needs. No conditions, no expectations. Why would you do this? You do not even know us. I know that you love your mother enough to uproot your entire life to give her comfort in her final days. I know that you were brave enough to travel halfway across the country to marry a stranger. That tells me something about who you are." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And I know what it is like to lose parents. Mine died of fever 6 years ago. I would give anything to have had more time with them. I will not take that from you." Delilah's tears spilled over then, and she wiped them away with the back of her hand. "I was so frightened on the train. I thought you would send us both back when you learned the truth. I am not that kind of man." She smiled through her tears. "No, I am beginning to see that you are not." They talked long into the night, the conversation flowing more easily than Katherine had expected. Delilah told him about her work as a seamstress, the fine dresses she had made for wealthy Philadelphia society women. She spoke of her father, who had died when she was young, and how her mother had raised her alone, taking in laundry and mending to make ends meet. Katherine told her about building the ranch, about the harsh first winters and the year a drought nearly destroyed everything. He spoke of his hopes for the future, his dreams of expanding the herd, of building something lasting. "I want a family," he admitted. "That is why I sent for a mail-order bride. Not just someone to cook and clean, though I will admit those things are helpful, but I want children someday. I want this ranch to mean something beyond just my own existence." "I want that too," Delilah said softly. "I have always wanted children. A real family. Then we are agreed on what matters most." The following weeks fell into a gentle rhythm. Katherine rose before dawn each day to tend the cattle and horses, to mend fences and check water sources. Delilah transformed the house into a real home. Hanging curtains she sewed herself, placing wildflowers in jars on the windowsills, cooking meals that made the kitchen smell like comfort and care. Dorothy spent her days resting, reading, and sitting by the window watching the mountains. Katherine noticed that she seemed to be gaining strength rather than losing it. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she smiled more often. "The air here agrees with her," Delilah told him one evening as they sat on the porch together. "She has not looked this well in months." "That is good news." "Yes." But Delilah's expression was troubled. "I do not want to hope too much. The doctors were very clear." Katherine reached over and took her hand. It was becoming a natural gesture between them, this simple contact. They had not yet married, waiting a respectful few weeks for everyone to adjust to the new arrangement. But the connection between them was growing stronger each day. "Hope is not a bad thing," he said. October arrived with brilliant golden aspens and crisp mornings. Katherine took Delilah riding around the ranch, showing her the full extent of his land. She proved to be a competent rider, sitting easily in the saddle as they climbed higher into the foothills. "I learned as a girl," she explained. "My aunt had a farm outside the city. I spent summers there." They dismounted near a stream and let the horses drink. The water was crystal clear, running over smooth stones, and the aspens created a canopy of gold overhead. "It is like being inside a dream," Delilah said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. Katherine watched her, this woman who had come into his life and changed everything. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was kind and strong and genuine. He found himself thinking about her constantly, looking forward to meals where they would talk, to evenings by the fire where they would simply exist in comfortable silence together. "Delilah," he said, and she turned to face him. "I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I want you to know that I am grateful every day that you came here. You have made this house feel like a home again." She stepped closer to him, her green eyes searching his face. "I feel the same way. I was so frightened when I got on that train in Philadelphia. I thought I was making a terrible mistake. But being here with you, it feels right. It feels like where I am supposed to be." He reached up and gently cupped her face in his hand. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing for a moment. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "Please," she whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. But as Delilah's arms came up around his neck and Katherine pulled her closer, the kiss deepened into something more certain. This was not just practical arrangement anymore. This was real feeling, real connection, real possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Delilah laughed, a sound of pure joy, and Katherine found himself laughing too. "We should probably get married soon," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "I think we probably should." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Golden, with Dorothy and Katherine's ranch hands as witnesses. Delilah wore a dress she had made herself from fabric Katherine had purchased in town, a soft cream color that made her eyes look even greener. She carried wildflowers that Dorothy had helped her gather that morning. The ceremony was simple, but meaningful. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Katherine kissed his bride with a tenderness that made Dorothy dab at her eyes with a handkerchief. They held a small celebration at the ranch afterward. Miguel's wife Maria had helped prepare food, and several neighbors came by to offer congratulations and well wishes. It was not a grand affair, but it was filled with genuine warmth and happiness. That night, after all the guests had left and Dorothy had retired to her room, Katherine led Delilah to his bedroom, which was now theirs. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted, "but not afraid, not with you." He took his time with her, patient and gentle, understanding that while she had agreed to marry him, true intimacy was something that needed to be built with care. Delilah responded to his tenderness with a passion that surprised them both, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, it felt like the completion of something that had been building since the moment they first locked eyes at the train station. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Delilah's head resting on Katherine's chest as he ran his fingers through her hair. "I love you," she said quietly. "I did not expect to, at least not so soon, but I do." "I love you too," he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I think I started falling for you the moment I saw you step off that train." She tilted her head up to kiss him. "Then we are both fortunate." As autumn deepened into winter, the ranch settled into a peaceful routine. Katherine continued his work, now with renewed purpose and energy. Coming home each evening to Delilah made every hard day worthwhile. They fell into an easy partnership, supporting each other in countless small ways. Dorothy continued to improve, much to everyone's amazement. The doctor from Golden came to check on her in November and declared himself baffled. "I cannot explain it," he said, shaking his head. "By all rights, based on what you have told me of her condition in Philadelphia, she should be much worse. Instead, she seems to be thriving." "Is it possible the other doctors were wrong?" Delilah asked hopefully. "Anything is possible. But I think it is more likely that the change in environment, the fresh air, the lack of stress, has given her body a chance to heal in ways we do not fully understand." He smiled. "Whatever the reason, it is good news. She is not out of danger entirely, but she is doing remarkably well." After he left, Delilah threw her arms around Katherine and wept with relief. "She is going to be all right," she kept saying. "She is really going to be all right." Katherine held her close, silently thanking whatever forces had brought this family to his ranch, had given him the chance to help them, to love them, to build a life with them. The first snow fell in late November, transforming the ranch into a winter wonderland. Katherine bundled Delilah up in warm clothes and took her out to see the cattle, which had been moved to lower pastures for the winter. She laughed as snowflakes caught in her hair and on her eyelashes, and he kissed them away. "You were right," she said. "The mountains are even more beautiful covered in snow." They celebrated Christmas together, the three of them, decorating a small pine tree Katherine cut from the foothills. Delilah made a special dinner, and they exchanged simple gifts. Katherine gave Delilah a beautiful shawl he had purchased from a weaver in Denver, soft wool in shades of blue and green. She gave him a new shirt she had sewn, with careful stitching and perfect fit. Dorothy gave them both her blessing and her gratitude, which was worth more than any material gift. As they sat by the fire that evening, full and content, Katherine looked at his wife and his mother-in-law and felt a sense of completion he had never experienced before. This was family. This was home. This was everything he had been working toward without even realizing it. Winter passed into spring, and with it came new life on the ranch. Calves were born, colts wobbled on uncertain legs, and the aspens began to show the first hints of green. Delilah had taken to ranch life with enthusiasm, learning to help with the chickens Katherine had bought, tending a vegetable garden she had planted near the house, even assisting with minor veterinary care when needed. In April, she realized she was pregnant. She told Katherine one evening as they were getting ready for bed, her hands trembling slightly as she took his. "I am going to have a baby," she said. "Our baby." The joy that flooded through him was almost overwhelming. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing until she playfully swatted at him to put her down. "Careful, you will make me dizzy." "I am going to be a father," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a child. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He kissed her deeply. "You have given me everything, Delilah. Everything I ever wanted." Dorothy was thrilled at the news, immediately beginning to knit small blankets and baby clothes. Her health had remained stable through the winter, and she seemed to have found a new purpose in preparing for her grandchild. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and into summer. Katherine was attentive to the point of being overprotective, and Delilah had to constantly remind him that she was pregnant, not fragile. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. She told him one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I am perfectly capable of normal activity. I know, I just worry." "I love that you worry," she said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "But I am strong. We are both strong." As her belly grew round with their child, Katherine found himself falling even more deeply in love with his wife. He marveled at the changes in her body, at the way she glowed with health and happiness. He would rest his hand on her stomach in the evenings and feel their baby move, kicks and tumbles that made them both laugh with wonder. "What do you hope for?" Delilah asked one night. "Boy or girl?" "Healthy," Katherine replied without hesitation. "That is all that matters. Healthy mother, healthy baby." "But if you had to choose," he considered. "I think a boy would be wonderful, someone to eventually help with the ranch, to carry on what I have built, but a girl would be equally wonderful. I would love teaching a daughter to ride, to be strong and capable like her mother." "Then we cannot go wrong either way," Delilah said contentedly. In early December, as the first real cold of winter set in, Delilah went into labor. Katherine rode frantically into town to fetch the doctor while Dorothy stayed with her daughter, calm and reassuring despite her own worry. The labor was long and difficult. Katherine paced outside the bedroom door, listening to Delilah's cries of pain and feeling utterly helpless. Dorothy came out periodically to update him, her face drawn but determined. "She is strong," Dorothy kept saying. "She will get through this." Finally, after nearly 20 hours, a baby's cry pierced the air. Katherine rushed into the room to find Delilah exhausted but smiling, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "A boy," she said weakly. "We have a son." Katherine approached the bed with trembling steps. The doctor placed the baby in his arms, and he looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father." The baby opened his eyes, dark blue like all newborns, and seemed to study Katherine with serious intensity. In that moment, Katherine felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. This was his son, his child, the future of everything he had built. They named him Kenneth, after Katherine's father. Kenneth Greer, born in December 1883 on a ranch in Golden, Colorado, under a sky full of stars. The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Kenneth was a healthy baby with strong lungs and definite opinions about when he wanted to eat and sleep. Delilah recovered slowly from the difficult birth, and Katherine took on as much of the baby care as he could, walking the floor with Kenneth at night, changing diapers, learning to swaddle properly. Dorothy was invaluable during this time, using her years of experience to guide them through the confusion and worry that came with new parenthood. But she also knew when to step back and let them figure things out on their own. "You are doing wonderfully," she told them one afternoon as she watched Katherine carefully bathing Kenneth in a small tub. "Both of you. This little boy is so loved. He is our whole world," Delilah said, watching her husband and son with soft eyes. Spring came again, and with it, Kenneth's first real smiles. Katherine would do anything to elicit that toothless grin, making silly faces and sounds that had Delilah laughing at him. "You are ridiculous," she told him fondly as he bounced Kenneth in his arms, both of them grinning at each other. "I am a father," he replied. "It is my job to be ridiculous." Dorothy celebrated her 65th birthday in May, looking healthier than she had in years. The illness that had been slowly killing her in Philadelphia seemed to have gone into full remission. The doctor could offer no medical explanation, but Katherine thought he understood. Dorothy had something to live for now. She had her daughter settled and happy, a son-in-law who cared for her, and a grandson to dote on. Purpose and love, it seemed, were powerful medicine. As Kenneth grew, he became the center of all their lives. His first words were "Papa" and "Mama," to the delight of both parents. His first steps were taken in the kitchen, wobbling from Dorothy's arms to Katherine's waiting hands. Every milestone was celebrated, every moment treasured. The ranch continued to prosper. Katherine expanded his herd and his land holdings, building on the foundation he had laid years before. But now everything he did was with his family in mind. He was not just building for himself anymore. He was building a legacy for Kenneth, and for the other children he and Delilah hoped to have. When Kenneth was 2 years old, Delilah became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the spring of 1886, she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Deanna. She had Delilah's green eyes and Katherine's dark hair, and her brother Kenneth was immediately fascinated by her. "Baby," he would say, pointing at his sister with chubby fingers. "My baby." "Yes," Delilah would tell him, "your baby sister, you have to help take care of her." Kenneth took his job seriously, bringing Deanna toys and sitting quietly near her cradle. Katherine watched his children interact and felt a contentment so deep, it sometimes brought tears to his eyes. Dorothy was in her element with 2 grandchildren to love. Despite her advancing age, she remained active and involved, telling stories, singing old songs, passing on family traditions. The grandchildren adored her and she them. "You have given me such a gift," she told Katherine one afternoon as they sat on the porch watching the children play. "I was dying in Philadelphia, in body and spirit both. You saved my life when you built those rooms, when you welcomed me into your home and your family." "You have given us just as much," Katherine replied. "You raised an incredible daughter. You have helped raise incredible grandchildren. This family would not be what it is without you." The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Katherine and Delilah's love deepened with each passing season, the initial attraction growing into something solid and enduring. They worked side by side to build their life, weathering drought and hard winters, celebrating good years and healthy cattle. In 1888, they welcomed another son, Daniel. The ranch house had to be expanded again to accommodate their growing family, and Katherine built the additions with the same care he had given to those first 2 rooms. Kenneth grew into a responsible boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. He followed his father everywhere, learning to ride, to rope, to care for the animals. Deanna was spirited and clever, with a laugh that rang out across the valley. Daniel was still young, but already showing signs of his father's steady temperament. Dorothy remained healthy well into her 70th year, defying all the dire predictions from those Philadelphia doctors. She had found her peace and purpose on this Colorado ranch, and she thrived in ways that seemed to defy medical science. One evening in late summer of 1890, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink over the mountains, Katherine and Delilah sat together on the porch. The children were in bed, Dorothy was reading in her room, and the ranch was quiet except for the sounds of cattle and horses settling for the night. "You ever think about that day at the train station?" Delilah asked, her head resting on Katherine's shoulder. "Often," he admitted. "I think about how nervous I was, how uncertain. I had no idea that the woman stepping off that train would become my entire world." "I was terrified," Delilah confessed. "I was sure you would turn us away when you saw my mother was ill. I had prepared myself for rejection. Instead, I built you rooms. Instead, you built us a home." She lifted her head to look at him. "You built us a life. Everything good in my world exists because you chose kindness over convenience that day." Katherine kissed her forehead. "I got far more than I gave. I was alone on this ranch, working toward goals that felt hollow because I had no one to share them with. You brought me purpose. You brought me love. You brought me family." "We brought each other those things," Delilah corrected gently. "This is a partnership, Katherine. Everything we have built, we built together." He could not argue with that. In the 8 years since she had arrived in Golden, Colorado with her dying mother and a suitcase full of hope, they had created something beautiful together. A marriage based on respect and genuine affection. Children who were loved and secure. A home that welcomed friends and neighbors. A ranch that prospered through their joint efforts. "You think we should have more children?" Delilah asked, a teasing note in her voice. Katherine laughed. "How many are you thinking?" "I do not know. I am happy with 3, but I am also happy to have more if that is what happens." "Then we will see what the future brings," Katherine said. "But whatever it brings, we will face it together." In the spring of 1891, Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 72 years old and had lived almost 9 years longer than any doctor had predicted. Her death was not unexpected, but it was deeply felt. Kenneth, now 7 years old, cried openly at the loss of his beloved grandmother. Deanna, at 5, did not fully understand but sensed the sadness in the household. Even little Daniel, only 3, seemed to know something important had changed. They buried Dorothy on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains she had loved so much. The entire community of Golden turned out for the funeral, a testament to how beloved she had become in her years in Colorado. "She was happy here," Delilah said as they stood by the grave after everyone had left. "At the end, she told me that coming to Colorado was the best thing that ever happened to her. She said she got to see her grandchildren grow, got to be part of a real family, got to live instead of just existing." Katherine put his arm around his wife. "She was a remarkable woman. She raised a remarkable daughter. She loved you like a son," Delilah said. "Did you know that? She told me once that she could not have wished for a better son-in-law if she had chosen him herself." The loss of Dorothy left a hole in their lives, but it also served as a reminder to cherish every moment they had together. Katherine became even more devoted to his family, making sure to spend quality time with each of his children, to tell Delilah daily that he loved her, to never take for granted the blessings he had been given. As the children grew, each developed distinct personalities. Kenneth was serious and hardworking, already showing the makings of a fine rancher. Deanna was creative and spirited, with a gift for music that delighted everyone. Daniel was gentle and thoughtful, with a special way with animals. In 1893, Delilah became pregnant for the fourth time. At 35, she was considered old for childbearing by the standards of the day, and Katherine worried. But Delilah was strong and healthy, and she assured him that all would be well. "I have been through this 3 times before," she reminded him. "I know what to expect." Their fourth child was born in early 1894, another girl they named Daphne. She was small but healthy, with her mother's fair hair and her father's serious expression. Kenneth, now 10 years old, was gentle and protective with his baby sister. Deanna, 8, immediately took on the role of little mother, helping to care for Daphne whenever Delilah would allow it. Daniel, 6, was simply fascinated by the tiny person who had joined their family. "Our family is complete now," Delilah announced firmly after Daphne's birth. 4 healthy children is more than enough blessing for any couple. Katherine could not argue with that logic, though secretly he would have welcomed as many children as Delilah was willing to bear. But he respected her decision, grateful for the family they had built together. The ranch continued to expand and prosper. Katherine took on more land, increased his herds, and became known throughout Colorado as a fair and successful rancher. But he never forgot his priorities. Family came first always. He made sure to have dinner with his family every evening, no matter how busy the workday had been. He attended church every Sunday with Delilah and the children. He took time to teach Kenneth the ins and outs of ranching, to listen to Deanna play the piano they had purchased for her, to take walks with Daniel and talk about the natural world, to rock baby Daphne to sleep with soft lullabies. As the 19th century drew to a close, Katherine found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought about the lonely man he had been, working this ranch with no one to share it with. He thought about the letter he had placed in that Eastern newspaper, advertising for a mail-order bride. He thought about opening Delilah's letter and learning she was bringing her mother, and his decision to build those rooms instead of turning her away. Every choice had led to this moment. Every decision had built toward this life. One evening in the summer of 1899, as the new century approached, Katherine and Delilah celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. The children had made decorations, and Kenneth, now 15 and nearly as tall as his father, helped prepare a special dinner. After the meal, after the children had been put to bed, Katherine and Delilah walked out to Dorothy's grave on the hill. They stood together in the twilight, holding hands, looking out over the ranch that had become their kingdom. "She would be so proud of everything we have built," Delilah said softly. "Not just the ranch, but our family, our life together." "I think she knew," Katherine replied. "I think she saw it all taking shape even in those early days. She was wise like that." Delilah turned to face him, placing her hands on his chest. "I love you, Katherine Greer. I have loved you since that first kiss by the stream when the aspens were gold and the world felt full of possibility. I will love you until the day I die." "And I love you," he replied, pulling her close. "You took a chance on me, on this life, on these mountains and this wild land. You brought your mother and your hope and your incredible strength. You made me whole." They kissed as the sun set over the Colorado Rockies. Two people who had started as strangers bound by a practical arrangement and had become soulmates bound by genuine love. The years that followed were filled with both joy and challenge, as all lives are. There were hard winters and difficult times, but the foundation Katherine and Delilah had built was strong enough to weather any storm. Their children grew into fine adults, each carrying forward the values of hard work, kindness, and family that had been instilled in them from birth. Kenneth took over more and more of the ranch operations as Katherine aged, showing the same dedication and skill his father had demonstrated. Deanna married a teacher from Denver and moved to the city, but she visited often with her own children. Daniel became a veterinarian, using his gift with animals to help ranchers throughout Colorado. Little Daphne, who was not so little anymore, proved to have her mother's talent for sewing and her father's business sense, opening a successful dress shop in Golden. As the new century progressed, Katherine and Delilah watched their children build their own lives and families. They became grandparents many times over, their home always open to the growing extended family. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1914, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Katherine, now 64, stood on the porch with Delilah, now 56, and looked out at the crowd of family members who had come to honor them. "We did well," Delilah said quietly. "We did better than well," Katherine corrected. "We built something that will last for generations." That evening, after everyone had left or retired to bed, Kenneth approached his parents. He was 30 years old now, married with 3 children of his own, and he had something important to discuss. "I have been thinking," he began, "about this ranch and its future. I want to make sure it stays in the family, that what you and Mother built continues." "The ranch will be yours someday," Katherine said. "You know that." "I know. But I want to make sure we honor it properly, honor the legacy you have created. I want to make sure my own children understand what this place means, what you and Mother sacrificed to build it." Katherine looked at his son with immense pride. "You already understand that, which means you will teach them well. The ranch is not just land and cattle. It is family and love and hard work. It is those 2 rooms I built before your mother arrived, expanding to make space for people who needed a home. It is your grandmother, Dorothy, who lived years longer than anyone expected because she had something to live for. It is your mother's courage in coming west with hope and determination. It is all of us together." Delilah wiped tears from her eyes. "Your father is right. This ranch is people, not just property. As long as the family remembers that, it will thrive." Kenneth embraced them both. "I will make sure they remember, I promise you that." The years continued to pass, marked by births and deaths, celebrations and sorrows, the normal rhythm of life. Katherine's hair turned completely silver, then white. Delilah's beauty matured into something even more striking, her green eyes still bright and full of intelligence. They took to spending evenings on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains they both loved. Sometimes they talked for hours, reminiscing about the past and discussing the future. Other times they sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, needing no words to communicate the depth of their love and contentment. In the spring of 1920, Katherine fell ill with pneumonia. At 70 years old, his body did not have the strength it once had. Delilah nursed him tirelessly, just as he had cared for her through 4 pregnancies and countless smaller ailments over the years. Their children took turns sitting with him, and the house was full of family. One afternoon, when he was feeling slightly better, Katherine asked Delilah to help him to the window so he could look out at the mountains. "I never tire of that view," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Every day for 40 years, I have looked at those mountains and felt grateful." "They are beautiful," Delilah agreed, standing beside him with her arm around his waist. "You remember when I asked if I could kiss you, that day by the stream when the aspens were gold? Of course I remember. It was the beginning of everything." "I knew then," Katherine said. "I knew you were the one I had been waiting for my whole life. I knew our life together would be extraordinary." "It has been," Delilah said, with tears streaming down her face. "Every single day has been a gift. I want you to know," he continued, turning to face her, "that if I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing. Not one moment. Not one decision. You and our children and this life we built together, it has been perfect." "Katherine Greer, you are not allowed to say goodbye yet," Delilah said fiercely. "You are going to get better, and we are going to have many more years together." He smiled gently and touched her face. "I will try, my love. For you, I will always try." Katherine did recover from that bout of pneumonia, though he was never quite as strong afterward. But he had several more good years, years filled with family gatherings and quiet moments with Delilah, years of watching his grandchildren grow and even meeting a few great-grandchildren. He died peacefully in his sleep in the autumn of 1924, 3 months shy of his 75th birthday. Delilah woke beside him as she had every morning for 41 years and knew immediately that he was gone. She did not cry out or panic. Instead, she took his hand one final time and whispered, "Thank you for building those rooms. Thank you for loving my mother. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for this beautiful life." The funeral was attended by hundreds of people from across Colorado. Katherine Greer had become something of a legend, a man who had built a successful ranch through hard work and integrity, who had raised a fine family, who had been a pillar of his community. But to Delilah, he was simply the man who had seen her step off a train with her dying mother and had chosen kindness. The man who had built rooms in 3 days so they would feel welcome. The man who had become her partner, her lover, her best friend, her everything. She buried him next to Dorothy on the hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved. The headstone was simple: Katherine Greer, 1850–1924. Beloved husband, father, and grandfather, Delilah lived another 12 years, surrounded always by her children and grandchildren. She remained sharp and active well into her 70s, still sewing, still tending her garden, still telling stories about the early days on the ranch. She spoke often of Katherine, keeping his memory alive for the younger generations who had not known him. She told them about his kindness, his work ethic, his devotion to family. She told them about those 2 rooms he had built before she even arrived, about how that single act of generosity had changed the course of all their lives. In the summer of 1936, as Delilah was approaching her 78th birthday, she gathered her 4 children around her. "I am tired," she told them simply. "I have lived a long and beautiful life, but I am ready to rest now." Kenneth, now 52, took his mother's hand. "You have been the best mother anyone could ask for." Deanna, 50, kissed her mother's cheek. "Everything good in my life came from you and Father." Daniel, 48, fought back tears. "You taught us what love looks like." Daphne, 42, held her mother close. "We will make sure your grandchildren and great-grandchildren know your story." "Know our story," Delilah corrected gently. "Mine and your father's. Tell them about the mail-order bride who brought her elderly mother. Tell them about the rancher who built rooms for them both. Tell them about how love can grow from the smallest seeds of kindness. Tell them that family is everything." Delilah Greer died 2 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep, in the same house where she had lived for 54 years. She was buried next to Katherine and Dorothy on the hill, completing the family circle. The ranch continued to thrive under Kenneth's management, and later under his children and grandchildren. The house was maintained with love and care, including those 2 original rooms that Katherine had built in 3 frantic days back in 1882. They became something of a shrine to the family's history, a reminder of where it all began. Generations later, the story of Katherine and Delilah Greer remained a central part of the family's identity. Children grew up hearing about the rancher who had built rooms for his mail-order bride and her dying mother, about how that simple act of compassion had laid the foundation for a family dynasty. The two rooms still stood, preserved exactly as they had been, with windows looking out toward the mountains. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the aspens turned gold and the sun set in brilliant colors over the Colorado Rockies, family members would stand in those rooms and feel the presence of the love that had started it all. It was a love built on kindness and courage, on taking chances and showing compassion, on building rooms and building lives. It was a love that had created a legacy lasting far beyond the lives of the two people who had started it. And it had all begun with a letter, a train ride, an elderly mother, and a rancher who chose to build rooms instead of turning them away. From that simple beginning had grown something extraordinary. A family, a home, a love that transcended time and touched everyone it reached. The mountains still stood watch over the ranch, eternal and unchanging. And somewhere in the evening breeze that whispered through the aspens, you could almost hear the echo of Katherine's voice asking, "May I kiss you?" And Delilah's whispered reply, "Please." That kiss by the stream, that first touch of love, had rippled forward through time, creating waves that touched every generation that followed. It proved that love built on kindness and respect, on seeing and valuing another person completely, was the strongest foundation of all. And so the story of the mail-order bride who brought her elderly mother, and the rancher who built rooms for them both, became more than just a story. It became a testament to the power of love, the importance of family, and the truth that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change entire destinies. The ranch still stands today, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation laid by Katherine and Delilah Greer. And those two rooms, built in 3 days back in 1882, remain at the heart of it all, a physical reminder that love begins with making space in your life for others, with building rooms not just in your house, but in your heart.